Hey there, everyone. Welcome to this week's live chat with me, Bryan Barron, Director of Skincare Research for Paula's Choice Skincare. It is Wednesday. I sound like, when that record slows down, you're like, Wednesday, October 28th, and I am here with you to discuss antioxidants and free radical damage, what that means for your skin. We'll also touch on what it means for your overall health because the two are closely linked. We'll go over use of topical antioxidants, how dietary antioxidants can also play a role. It's very much a full circle type thing. Been having a good week so far. I hope you guys have been as well. A lot going on in the world, as always, and certainly in this country with Halloween coming up and first Halloween in my lifetime that we'll go through as we're still dealing with the pandemic. That should be interesting. We're doing some fun things in our neighborhood, and I do plan to take my son out, who is going to dress as a ninja. And I figured that's actually a really good costume to pick at this time of year because you already have like one of those gator type face buffs on, to conceal your identity. So I don't have to worry about him dressing as like Shrek and then I have to put a mask over his mask, which I was like, how am I going to do that? But anyway, it should be fun. We'll see which neighbors are participating in the actual trick-or-treating. There are certainly ways that can be done safely. Yeah, so looking forward to that. What else? Oh, we have been on a bi-weekly schedule for these live chats, and we are going to stick with that, but we're going to mess with you a little bit next month because the schedule we have been maintaining would have the second of two live chats scheduled for November would occur the Wednesday before Thanksgiving here in the United States, and I'm actually off work that day. We are instead doing the November live chats on the 4th and the 18th. So I will be back here next week, 7 days from now, instead of 2 weeks from now, to talk about, actually, I'm not 100% sure on the topics because the social team is still debating that, but I think one of the shows is going to be an Ask Me Anything. I always like that topic. They're just kind of fun because I never know what you guys are going to ask me. But I also know that there are some of you that just ask me anything regardless of the show, which is also okay. Although for the interest of the entire audience, I always love it when you guys keep the questions on the topic of that show. But having said that, if you ask me something else, I try to get to as many questions as I can. So, let's see. Without further ado, where are my notes? This is antioxidants. It's a complicated topic when you really take a dive into the science. And it's complicated because there are different mechanisms and ways for the human body and our skin to experience oxidative damage. Some of it is within our control. For example, cigarette smoking, tobacco use of any kind is very bad for numerous reasons. One of many is that it triggers oxidative damage within the body that can directly impact the skin. That is something within your control. If you smoke, you can take steps to quit. I did. Years ago, in fact, just past 8 years? Yeah, 8 years since I had my last cigarette. Still surprises a lot of people to find out that I used to smoke, but indeed I did. And I'm not proud of it, but I am proud of the fact that I no longer do it because I never thought I did go through a period where I thought I'm never going to be able to quit. I was never a heavy smoker, but I just never seemed to 100% be able to kick the habit for long periods of time and until now. So yeah, 8 years strong there. But digression, cigarette smoking is one thing that is within your control. Environmental exposure in terms of not tanning, which would also include not indoor tanning, things like that. What you eat, A poor diet is going to be deficient in antioxidants. Therefore, it's not going to be giving your body those nutrients it needs to deal with a lot of the damage that its own systems can quickly become overwhelmed by. So that is another thing that is within your control. One of the big things that isn't in anyone's control is the fact that we are all, as long as we're living, we're aging. I'm older now than I was at the start of the show. I can't go back and reverse any of that. And one of the factors of our bodies becoming less able to handle oxidative stress is simply getting older. You know, it's very much how your car, you know, you can only take it into the repair shop so many times before the mechanics can be like, if I were you, I would think about trading this in for a new model. But let me go through my notes to make sure that I cover. This is really going to be an overview, and hopefully I won't be getting too technical. If you have any questions about what I'm going to discuss, feel free to leave it in the questions box. I will get to as many as I can. This, I'm thinking, is probably going to take about 15 minutes or so, and then I'll get right into questions. So antioxidants, free radical damage. It starts with what's called ROS. That is another name for free radicals, and ROS stands for reactive oxygen species. And these are generated during normal cellular metabolism, as well as in response to xenobiotics, cytokines, and even harmful bacteria. Think like bacteria that can cause infections, can cause illnesses. Xenobiotics are kind of a broad term that applies to any chemicals that we encounter that are not that the body views as foreign. It doesn't necessarily quite know how to deal with it. There are systems in place, like for example via the liver and kidneys, that can help metabolize those substances and then excrete them, so rid the body of them to the extent possible. And that depends on the chemical. Some are some are excreted, broken down at 100%, and then some you just get traces that remain in your body, like PFAS chemicals, for example. Those would be xenobiotics. Industrial chemicals, drugs, pesticides, food additives, even certain fragrances can be xenobiotics. Okay, I want to make sure I covered that. Oxidative stress refers to the imbalance from excess reactive oxygen species or oxidants that are, when it gets to the point that the capacity for our natural antioxidant system to neutralize those invaders, so to speak, is faulty. So the body lacks the ability to mount an effective antioxidant response. It's surprising how fast that response naturally occurring can become depleted. We'll talk more about that in a moment. The main reactive oxygen species are the hydroxyl radicals, the peroxide and peroxyl and alkoxyl radicals. Singlet oxygen, hydrogen peroxide, organic peroxides are also common. Organic peroxides, I know it sounds like something you might use to bleach your hair. They are simply carbon-containing molecules that have two oxygen molecules bonded together. An example of organic peroxides are many flammable or highly explosive chemicals would fall under that purview. And all of those reactive oxygen species, those free radicals, can cause cell damage, cell death, negative changes to the skin's immune system as well as the body's immune system, and also changes, this is in regards more to skin, but changes in how new skin cells are formed and how they proliferate. So simply put, these rogue molecules can damage pretty much every aspect of skin to one degree or another. Free radicals are basically unstable molecules, and they are constantly looking to get back to a balanced, normal state. They're missing an electron. So they seek out that electron that they need from other intact healthy molecules. So you've got a nice keratinocyte, a skin cell, just sitting around minding its own business. You've got a peroxyl radical floating around in the air. This is a very simplistic example. And that peroxyl radical lands on the surface of your skin, senses that the molecule that it's interacting with is whole, and says, aha, you have a puzzle piece that I need to be complete. So I am going to steal that from you, thank you very much, make myself whole again, and go about my business. Meanwhile, the keratinocyte on the surface of skin, that molecule that the free radical took the electron from, is now unstable itself. So that causes it triggers a chain reaction that causes that keratinocyte to then look to its neighbor and say, hey, intact keratinocyte, looking young and healthy and beautiful, I'm going to steal your electron so that I can be, go back to the way I was. And then that keratinocyte, and that is the cascade of damage that free radicals can generate. It seems so, they seem so innocuous, but they're not, believe me. Major triggers of free radical and reactive oxygen generation and the subsequent skin damage it causes. No shocker here. UV light, it not only triggers pretty significant oxidative stress, but also inflammation that has far-reaching effects. Blue light and HEV, high energy visible light, that is light. So UVB light goes from 290 to 320 nanometers. Nanometer is a measurement of light. And then UVA is the 320 to 400 nanometer range. Visible light is anywhere from 400 to 700 nanometers, with most blue light in the range of, I believe it varies based on whose research you're looking at, but blue light is typically in the, I believe, the 420 to 550-ish range. So that is the type of light that, unless you have night mode enabled or dark mode, it goes by different names, on your digital devices, where instead of emitting blue light, it's emitting harmless yellow light. That is what your skin is being bombarded with from the digital devices that we, hold as close to our face a large portion of the day for most of us, or we're sitting in front of monitors like the one I am now. I have night mode set on this and my phone. But even when you do that, blue light is naturally present as part of daylight. So it's impossible to avoid it 100% unless you want to literally unplug and live underground for the rest of your life, and I would not recommend that. The exposure to blue and HEV light produces about 50% of the total oxidative stress that is caused by sunlight. Because remember, sunlight, as part of the UV light spectrum, blue light falls into that larger range that emanates from daylight. Infrared light, which is what we feel as heat. So it's kind of one of those fun facts that when you're outside on a sunny day and the sun, let's use this example. So you travel, you live in a northern latitude like I do. You travel to a southern latitude. Maybe it's a 12-hour flight, something like that. But when you go outside and the sun is shining, you definitely feel it as being more intense because you are that much closer to the equator. That heat you feel isn't necessarily about the proximity. I mean, it is, but it's really more about the proximity generating more infrared radiation that you perceive as heat. And that can damage the mitochondria, which is the energy-producing machinery in cells responsible for the cellular activity. So when that mitochondrial damage occurs from exposure to infrared light, the cellular machinery can quickly either slow down, not doing what it used to do or should be doing as efficiently, or it just becomes faulty and can get to the point where it literally breaks down if that damage continues. Air pollution is another significant source of reactive oxygen species free radical damage. That can happen on and within skin. There are a class of air pollutants known as small particulate matter that are definitely small enough to penetrate past skin's surface. The more intact your barrier is, the healthier and stronger that is, the harder it is for those small particulate matters to get through. But it's very, very easy to disrupt our barrier to keep it from being healthy. It naturally weakens with age. A whole laundry list. I mean, we could do a whole show on skin's barrier, and maybe we should, if we haven't already. We've done several of these. But suffice to say, antioxidants play a significant role in helping to offset the visible effects of airborne pollutants, including those that can get lodged. Again, these small particulates can get lodged inside the pore lining, where they can basically continue their damage unchecked and cause damage to the pore lining that you then need a different group of antioxidants that are either carried further into the pore line by an ingredient such as salicylic acid, or that are oil soluble, and I'll talk about the difference between those or give you examples of water and oil soluble antioxidants. But those oil soluble antioxidants are able to penetrate further into the pore as opposed to being blocked. Skin does have, I think I mentioned this a few minutes ago, its natural supply of antioxidants. In the research, it is referred to as skin's endogenous or naturally occurring antioxidants. We know what those are. Vitamin C is both ascorbic acid and ascorbates, which are derivatives of ascorbic acid. Vitamin E, and there's multiple types. They belong to a group called tocotrienols, and there is, I believe, 8, like alpha tocopherol, gamma, delta, beta, and so on. But the tocotrienols as a group are incredibly potent antioxidants that are endogenous to skin. Then you have antioxidant enzymes like superoxide dismutase, catalase, glutathione peroxidase, and then glutathione itself, which is considered the body's master antioxidant, as well as ubiquinol, or otherwise known as ubiquinone, or you may see it on a supplement as coenzyme Q10. That is a wonderful, wide-ranging antioxidant, and once you get past the age of 40-ish, your natural supply of coenzyme Q10 dwindles. For some people, quite precipitously, which is why a lot of doctors, particularly cardiac doctors, will advise their patients to begin, who are over the age of 40, to begin taking a coenzyme Q10 supplement. It definitely plays a role throughout the body. Cardiologists and cardiac doctors typically advise it because of the role coenzyme Q10 can play in heart health. As you're listening, and as we're discussing supplements, I just ask that if you are considering taking any supplements, that you always run it by a healthcare provider or very least a pharmacist first, just to make sure that it's a good supplement for you to take and that it won't interact negatively with any other medications or other supplements that you are taking. Remember, just because it is sold over the counter doesn't mean that there are no precautions that should be taken. Aspirin and ibuprofen are available over the counter. You could overdose on those and cause some serious health issues. It's a permanent lasting damage, for example. It's a big deal. So just ask the question. I don't want to scare anybody, but just ask the question. Throughout the body, it's also worth mentioning that hormones such as estradiol and melatonin also function as antioxidants in addition to the other roles that they play. I meant to check this before the show. Estradiol being derived from estrogen, and estrogen primarily being a female hormone. Men have estrogen as well, but much lower levels, just like women have testosterone, but much lower levels than men do. I meant to check, though, about the antioxidant potential of testosterone, and I did not. Forgot. So I can't say at this point whether testosterone would convey. I suspect it does to a certain degree, but perhaps not as much as estradiol. Could be one more reason why, on average, women tend to outlive men. But that is multifactorial. Interesting topic to study, though. The Water-soluble antioxidants, not surprisingly, include vitamin C, the B vitamins like niacinamide, green tea, milk thistle, resveratrol, which is the most potent antioxidant found in grapes, pomegranate, as well as pomegranate's big deal antioxidant is called ellagic acid. It has others as well. It's a good source of polyphenol antioxidants. Good rule of thumb is that the darker the fruit or the darker the vegetable, the richer and more varied its antioxidant content is likely to be. There are some exceptions. For example, cauliflower is quite white, but it's actually a very good source of antioxidants. I believe the same chemical compound that is found in broccoli called sulforaphanes. And I believe cauliflower has a different subset of antioxidants along with that, but you wouldn't think, looking at kind of the bleached look of cauliflower compared to like eggplant or tomato or blueberry, that cauliflower would be chock full of antioxidants, but surprisingly it is. Fat-soluble antioxidants would be retinol, vitamin E, coenzyme Q10, ubiquinone that I just mentioned, curcumin and curcuminoid ingredients, which are from the turmeric plant, and lycopene is another example. I'm giving you examples. That's not an exhaustive list, and that those I just rattled off are by no means the best antioxidants. There isn't a best. There are a lot of good ones, and research is very clear that for both topical application and oral consumption, that the more varied your intake and application of antioxidants is, the better, because they all have the same goal of helping to offset the negative impact of oxidative damage, but they do so in different ways. Again, as we just discussed, some are water-soluble, some are oil-soluble, some are more stable than others, some work well with others to enhance stability. Vitamin E, for example, coenzyme Q10 can help vitamin E remain stable longer. And in turn, vitamin E can help vitamin C stay stable longer. Basically, it's kind of interesting. It's a phenomenon that I think would fall into what's called quorum sensing, where these antioxidants that help support each other can sense when one of them starts flagging, wearing down. It's like a relay race, and I've got one more lap to go, but I just don't think I can do it. That's vitamin C, and then vitamin E kind of senses, hey, my buddy vitamin C getting a little worn down there. I'm going to go over and help him out. And vitamin E, I'm not exactly sure from a chemical conversion process what happens, but vitamin E can basically give vitamin C a Red Bull and say, here, drink this. And the vitamin C is just like, woohoo, I can go another lap now. Thanks, vitamin E. So that's just another example. I hope I'm not being too cutesy about it, but I'm trying to think of ways like on the fly to explain this in easy to understand terms, because it can very quickly get complicated. There's some, okay, I wanted to make sure I don't lose track on my notes. Looking there, okay, I think I got something a little, I wanted to drive home the point that the endogenous antioxidants can become depleted, and quite quickly, when skin is exposed to UV light without protection. And studies have shown, these are animal studies, but they can be equated to what would happen on human skin. In fact, there are some human skin studies as well, but for the ones that I was looking at, they were looking at various types of animals that were exposed to UV light. They found that the endogenous antioxidant content of the skin was depleted up to 93% after short exposures without protection to UVA and to UVB light. And that is 93% depleted both in the epidermis and the dermis, because skin has those endogenous antioxidants I mentioned are a network that is present in every layer of skin. So the epidermis being the uppermost layers, that's our first line of defense. once they get depleted there, the antioxidants and the dermis are just like, oh, holy crap, we better start doing something because we know our first line of defense is pretty much shot, so now it's our time to shine. But they can be depleted very quickly. They do regenerate, but with cumulative exposure without protection, the whole process weakens, and then skin has to work even harder to rebuild itself, and that will eventually lead, if you don't do anything to step in and stop the damage, you literally can get to a state where your skin, especially if you also have a poor diet, low nutrition, your skin can become chronically deficient in antioxidants. And when it's at that state, you're vulnerable to even greater and deeper damage. Another surprising fact is that as the endogenous antioxidants in your skin work to clear out the waste products from the free radicals being neutralized, it's kind of like they start piling up, right? And when skin's endogenous antioxidants assisted by topical antioxidants too, when all of that is humming along, those waste products are cleared out. They're broken down fully, they're eliminated, they're metabolized. You don't have to worry about it. When that process gets faulty, though, those waste products can build up. And you won't see or feel it happening, but eventually, again, if you get to that state of antioxidant deficiency, eventually you will see that on your skin, as it would not be uncommon to describe your complexion as dull and lifeless. Like, my radiance is gone. My skin just always seems to be irritated. It's dry and flaky. It just always looks drab. It used to have so much vibrancy, and I don't know what happened. That is how that can manifest, as well as you could also your skin color. This would be more apparent in people who have lighter complexions, just because the contrast is greater. But your skin will take on kind of an unhealthy, sallow, yellowish look that is more visible evidence of byproducts building up, these waste products that aren't being cleared out the way that they should be. Dietary sources of antioxidants, mostly from plant sources, dark green leafy vegetables, fruits. The more of those you can get into your diet without having to rely on a supplement, the better. Supplements can have their place. I'm not downplaying supplements. There are a few of them that I take myself. It basically is a sort of insurance because I think all of us can say that we don't eat as healthily as we should all the time, right? I mean, there is that other side where you can say, life is too short, I'm having that martini. Life is too short, I'm having that big piece of chocolate cake. Not doing my waist any favors, not doing my liver any favors, but I'm going to eat it anyway. So just keep in mind that absolutely plays a role. And again, variety is the spice of life, both for inside your body in terms of antioxidants and your skin. I have to mention the paradox of antioxidants. We talk about antioxidants, and the more the better, and they're good, they're good, they're good. You need them, and you do. But we as human beings, in order to carry out biological processes that literally keep us alive, breathing, a certain amount of oxidative damage needs to occur. Routine but limited exposure to reactive oxygen species, and this is a quote from the research, can provoke an adaptive response with improvement of defense mechanisms and consequently better responses and resistance to stress. One of the reasons that routine physical exercise, and it doesn't have to be, hours of pumping iron at the gym. It's that combination of resistance training, which would be some weight training, but it doesn't have to be, 500 pounds. And then the aerobic exercise, jogging, walking at a brisk pace, just getting out there and moving. That does induce oxidative stress, but it seems to induce it unless you're just like, it is possible to overdo exercise, as we all know. If you are doing things in moderation, which is kind of a good recipe for life in general. The amount of oxidative damage that's generated, you can essentially teach your system to adapt to that and end up through exercise. This is one of the reasons that researchers theorize people who exercise are healthier versus people who don't exercise, separate from the fact that people who exercise regularly tend to have better numbers and health metrics across the board. But it's that controlled and adaptive oxidative response that exercise triggers your body to go through that they believe helps. So it is not an exaggeration to say that regular exercising allows your body to handle oxidative stress from multiple sources even better. So get out there. I know I'm not looking forward to. It's going to get colder and colder here. We're in for a rough winter. I just feel it in my bones, but I'm going to get out there and exercise anyway. So the goal is what's called redox balance, which is a process where normal oxidative processes can occur that enhance health and longevity, and unchecked, highly inflammatory processes can be hindered both via topical application and oral intake of antioxidants. Just as another example, as far as too much of a good thing with antioxidants, because it is possible to overdo it. You may have seen some reports about both beta-carotene, too much of that being tumor promoting. Like there's research looking at people who take beta-carotene supplements thinking they're doing right by their body. Maybe they're eating a lot of beta-carotene rich foods. It's like the main antioxidant in sweet potatoes, for example. Ended up being more prone to lung tumors in their lung than those who either did not take a supplement or did not get much dietary beta-carotene, which is a plant form of vitamin A. But another example is overuse of vitamin E can inhibit an enzyme called glutathione S transferase. And that enzyme is pretty critical because it's responsible for the removal of toxic to your cell compounds that can generate tumors in various places throughout the body. So you just want to make sure that you keep it in check. It's another reason why it's important to talk to your healthcare provider or pharmacist about, you might think, oh, I'll start taking vitamin E or maybe some vitamin C. But vitamin E and beta-carotene, for that matter, actually, I'm not 100% sure about beta-carotene. It's a plant derivative of vitamin A, and vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin, meaning that the excess from foods and supplements that we ingest stays within the body for a certain period. It doesn't get flushed out the way water-soluble vitamins do, which is why it's much more difficult, for example, to get too much vitamin C versus getting too much vitamin A. But your body just recognizes when there's too much vitamin C and says, we're excreting what we don't need, goodbye. Whereas the fat-soluble vitamins they do accumulate in the tissues. All right, let's move on to questions. I am ready. Vivian was first in line. Hey, Brian, great to see you. What say you about 20% tetrahexyldecyl ascorbate? I've only been able to find research on 3%, but I know from the 20% niacinamide that higher concentrations can be better. And she has a related question. So, Vivian, you are absolutely right. There's a surprising shortage of independent research on tetrahexyldecyl ascorbate, which is a fat-soluble form of vitamin C. It's a very good antioxidant. I like seeing it. That would be a good oil-soluble, oil being fat, oil-soluble antioxidant to look for with other water-soluble antioxidants. It is the primary antioxidant that we use in our Resist Super Antioxidant Concentrate serum, where it's present at 5%. Yes, there are studies looking at 3%. I've seen a couple, if I'm not mistaken, that looked at concentrations upwards of 10% that showed some interesting results in terms of helping to improve skin discolorations. However, lower amounts, according to some well-done supplier studies I've seen. So these studies aren't independent. They are not peer-reviewed, typically not. Sometimes they can be. But when they are well done, when they are controlled and they're getting good results. I would, it can depend on the supplier. Behind the scenes here, we know who the reputable suppliers are. We have direct contact with them. When they present us with studies and information, and they know what our standards are, so they're not, the really good ones know not to send us a BS or puff piece type study that would, or be more likely to impress someone that hasn't done as much homework as we have. I can't speak to the level of homework in that regard that any other brand does, but you can draw conclusions to some degree based on the types of products they create and what they say about those products. So yeah, it is kind of a mystery. It is not a harmful ingredient. I haven't seen any scary toxicity or adverse reaction reports on it. So I would say that if you can find a higher amount of it, and I believe there are some 20%, it's called THD for short, there are those products out there, give them a try. It is a bioactive ingredient. Almost all forms of vitamin C, especially at that level, are. So I would just forewarn you, more of a precaution really, to just pay attention to how your skin responds. And if you see or feel signs of irritation, scale back frequency of use, or it could prove out that 20% THD is too much for your skin. A related question is, why do brands say that their plant oils naturally contain vitamin C? I thought oil-soluble vitamin C didn't occur naturally and could only be made in a lab. That is my understanding too, although plants are complex chemical structures. It's why I find it interesting, frustrating, and amusing when I read or hear certain brands saying that their products don't contain chemicals and they only use natural ingredients. And natural ingredients and synthetic ingredients, it's all chemicals. And interestingly, there are a lot of synthetic ingredients that you can look at from a chemical point of view and say, that is a very simple, solid, reliable chemical. It's going to be the same thing every time. We know what it's going to do. We know how much to use. And then you've got certain natural ingredients that have a mix of volatile compounds, not so volatile compounds, and then the ratio between those can shift based on what was the growing season like? How was the plant harvested? How was the plant preserved in between the harvest and being used in a skincare product? Think as Paula has said a lot, think of how long a head of lettuce lasts in your refrigerator. You could still, in theory, put a rotting plant in a moisturizer and say, yeah, it's got that plant in it. Doesn't mean that it's going to help your skin. But again, this all goes back to reputable ingredient manufacturers and suppliers and knowing who to work with, and they have their acts together and they would never do anything like that. But just really illustrating a point that natural ingredients are abundant sources of chemicals, and I don't like chemicals automatically having a negative connotation, because there are good and bad chemicals, and there are good and bad synthetic ingredients. There are good and bad natural ingredients. That's the truth. Yeah, so vitamin C naturally occurring vitamin C in plants is going to be ascorbic acid. That's the pure native form, and to the best of my knowledge, everything else is lab modified. That's why it's like there isn't retinol that is used in cosmetics. If you're looking and talking about pure retinol, it is synthetic. The only other option you have would be to derive it from animals or animals or animal organs, to be specific, which is why I'm not aware of a single skincare brand that does that. And for certain, Paula's Choice does not. We use synthetic retinol. The other thing with synthetic retinol is that it's a heck of a lot easier to work with. And again, it's that consistency from batch to batch that, depending on the natural source, isn't always easy to maintain. The King says, "Hi Brian, always nice to see you. A question about moisturizers. To call something a moisturizer, it needs to include ceramides, fatty acids, and cholesterol. PC Barrier Repair Moisturizer, which is fantastic, lacks cholesterol. And my question is why?" We don't use cholesterol in every single product. I respectfully disagree that it needs to have all those ingredients in order to be called a moisturizer. For no other, I mean, what about the emollients? What about the humectants? What about water? I mean, there's a lot of different ingredients that make a great moisturizer. And our role is to produce formulas that contain a variety of those ingredients, with the core tenets being has to have some antioxidants, has to have some barrier repair / replenishing ingredients. If it's for drier skin, it has to have some of the heavier hitting emollients. By heavier hitting, I don't mean they're going to feel heavy or greasy, but meaning that they need to be more substantive. They need to work even harder to prevent water loss from the deeper layers of skin. Exactly what those with dry skin need to get their skin to a state of suppleness, a state of comfort. So I think cholesterol is great. I love ceramides. What was the other one that you mentioned? Fatty acids are present in one way or another in pretty much any moisturizer that would be an emulsion of sorts and have a lotion or cream texture. There's a range of fatty acids, triglycerides, omega fatty acids, even fatty alcohols. And numerous plant extracts, non-fragrant plant oils are all different sources of fatty acids. So if you, I know there are a couple of brands out there that kind of, shout from the rooftops that there's like, what is it, that 3-2-1 or 3-2-2 ratio, otherwise it just isn't going to be effective. And I mean, we know that's not true based on a lot of other studies, and we know that's not true based on how numerous people around the world have fared with a lot of moisturizers that don't contain all of those ingredients, although most of them would at least contain fatty acids. Anthony asks, I'll go back to Iman's question too. Anthony wants to know if all antioxidants protect against pollution. Hello to you, Anthony. To one degree or another, I would say yes. There are some antioxidants that are better at it. The xanthophyll type, the plant pigments, xanthophylls, your lycopenes, your polyphenolic antioxidant pigments, again, that are found in the darker colored fruits and vegetables, spinach, arugula, things like that, broccoli. They tend to be better at absorbing, well, not absorbing, but neutralizing, disabling the free radicals, which are often, among the group of free radicals I mentioned earlier, there can also be a metallic element, particularly with airborne pollutants spewing out different metal pollutants into the air that find these peroxyl radicals, and then they become like, I think it's called a metalloperoxide, and those superfood type, it's what I call them, those just incredibly nutritious, very pigment dense foods, seem that their antioxidants seem to have a special ability to neutralize those types of radicals. And the enzymatic antioxidants like the superoxide dismutase, catalase, I can't think of a single instance of seeing catalase, which is an endogenous, naturally occurring antioxidant in our skin. I can't think of an instance where I've seen that in a skincare product. Superoxide dismutase, absolutely, and I'm wondering, I wish I had my chemist on the line so I could confer with her, but I'm wondering if the reason for that is because catalase is just too difficult to stabilize in a cosmetic formula. And so yes, it's available as a cosmetic ingredient. You could put it in there, but it's going to have little to no activity. And from my point of view, what's the point? I mean, and that's Paula's Choice point of view, is that we're not going to put an ingredient in a product just to make a label claim. It actually has to do something positive for your skin, or like in the case of preservatives, something positive for the formula itself, which in turn will benefit your skin because it keeps those good for skin ingredients protected from harmful microbes and other things that would otherwise cause them to break down. Okay, and I had to go back to Iman's question, or Amon. I apologize if I'm pronouncing the names wrong, as always. I meant to say antioxidant supplements. What are your thoughts on the derm's opinion? My previous derm said the same thing. Okay, that tells me, did you ask something earlier? And I missed it? Sorry, just kind of scrolling down the list here. Okay, so I'm not seeing anything else in regards to that question, Iman, so I'm not sure what you mean by what the derm opinion is. Let me extrapolate from a general sense, though. If you want to chime in, I'll look for that. Antioxidant supplements aren't something that I firmly believe everybody needs to take, or at least take all the time. However, if you have a less than ideal diet, if you don't eat an abundance of fresh fruits and vegetables, whole grains, which are surprisingly, I know, like, for example, gluten gets a terrible rap, and not to discredit anyone with a gluten intolerance or sensitivity. I have a sister and a nephew that are celiac sufferers. They literally cannot have gluten. It causes significant issues for them. But that doesn't change the fact that whole grain wheat, just to name one, is a great source of antioxidants as well. So is whole grain rice. The point is, if you are going to eat those ingredients, and in the case of gluten, if it is safe for you to do so, look for the wholest possible form and not the refined, simple carbohydrate flour form. By the way, if you haven't tried Ezekiel bread, which I've been eating for years as exclusively, every now and then I'll dive into a fresh loaf of sourdough bread, but I really love the Ezekiel bread, and it's flourless bread. It's fabulous. High fiber, good antioxidants, actually very good source of protein for bread. So, did you... Nope. Okay, hold on. Okay. Whether or not you take a broad spectrum antioxidant supplement is something to discuss with your physician based on your average diet, your lifestyle, and where you live. If you live in a heavily or more strongly polluted urban environment or spend a lot of time in such environments, you may have a greater need for certain antioxidants than you would if you lived elsewhere. And it's not necessarily that you can escape from air pollution. It really is everywhere to one degree or another. It really is a question of how much of it are you being exposed to. And it stands to reason that for example, New York City, with all of its automobile traffic, industrial, all around, New York City is going to have, and Los Angeles for that matter, with all of the traffic and the sprawling freeway systems, is going to have a higher degree of air pollutants than a more rural, less developed area. Obviously, there are certainly pros to living in or near a big city. But, one of the cons is going to be greater exposure to airborne pollutants, and then that simply means you take more steps to help counter that. You got to live your life, right? Okay. Did talk to Anthony real well. Hi, Brian. Later 2 chemical sunscreen. Oh, layer 2 chemical sunscreens. One is Paula's Choice Restoring SPF 50, which contains avobenzone. The other is Keep It Cool SPF 50, which contains Uvenol A+, and Tinosorb S. When I layer these products, will the Tinosorb S from one sunscreen help stabilize the avobenzone from the other sunscreen? Or does the sunscreen active need to be combined in one sunscreen for the stability? I'm not 100% sure. I know that in and of itself, Tinosorb, both Tinosorb S and Tinosorb M, and don't ask me to recite the long chemical name for either of those because it's like 86 syllables, and I'd miss at least 50 of them without actually reading it from a cue card, so to speak. But both Tinosorb S and Tinosorb M, which are not approved for use, at least not yet, in the US, but they are throughout Europe and the UK, and I believe it's in most, if not all, developed Asian nations. Don't think they are in Australia. Could be wrong. But though both of those are inherently stable actives in and of themselves, and it isn't always the situation where one sunscreen active having a very good stability profile in the presence of UV light can, in turn, stabilize weaker UVA actives. And I mean, and compared to avobenzone, there's no question that the tinosorb molecule, either S or M, is inherently more stable in the presence of sunlight than avobenzone. However, cosmetic chemists who work in sunscreen formulations know that that is one of avobenzone's weaknesses, and there are formulary steps that they can take, including other ingredients like antioxidants. There's a group of antioxidants that are called, I believe they're called triplet quenchers, and what those can do is that when avobenzone gets into that excited state in the presence of UV light, those antioxidants can step in and say, calm down, just take a deep breath. You don't need to fall apart, avobenzone. I am going to stabilize you and let you work, providing the UVA protection that you do for a longer period of time without breaking down. So that's the point I'm trying to make, is that avobenzone definitely has its weak spots, but there are ways that we are aware of, chemists are aware of, to minimize those as much as possible, or in some cases prevent that weakness altogether. And when you're dealing with that, and you're looking at the issue of UVA protection, I think it's not too far off to say that tinosorb and Univol Plus and avobenzone would be on equal footing. But what I don't know 100% is whether or not the layering that you're talking about is going to, if the tinosorb or the Univol Plus are going to have a stabilizing effect on avobenzone. I would have to check into that further. I would rather you layer that, work in a nice antioxidant serum, because antioxidants of many types have been shown to not, in some cases they've been shown to help stabilize organic active ingredients. Kind of an interesting fact is that we associate organic with natural, and yet the synthetic sunscreen chemicals like avobenzone, oxybenzone, octisalate, tinosorb are considered in the chemistry world organic sunscreens, whereas the often described as natural or naturally derived sunscreen actives of titanium dioxide and zinc oxide are described as inorganic, which, taken literally means not organic. And if you are looking for organic produce, you don't want inorganic, it's just weird word reversal there. Oh, I know where I was going with that, but antioxidants applied to skin, for example, green tea polyphenols, have also been shown to mitigate the damaging effects that UV light has on skin in concert with sunscreen. So in other words, the take-home message is that any sunscreen you consider, regardless of the actives, regardless of where in the world you are and which actives are approved and which aren't, always, always, always look for a sunscreen that has antioxidants. More is better, but concentration matters as well. So, I would rather see you use a sunscreen that has 2 or 3 antioxidants used in efficacious amounts than one that has 10 antioxidants, but they're all used in nearly insignificant amounts to impart benefit to your skin. So it looks nice on the label, like, wow, this has 10 antioxidants. Wow, this only has 2. But depending on where they fall on the list, the one with 2 antioxidants may actually be the better choice for you in terms of how it protects your skin in the presence of UV light. Daniel asks, what are the best supplements to protect against advanced glycation and end products in the body? Are there any ingredients that can be used topically to prevent this? Do antioxidants help? Antioxidants can help to varying degrees through the inhibition of these metalloproteinases, which are harmful enzymes that have an affinity for collagen, and they're not nice to it. they seek out collagen and they seek to destroy it or degrade it. So yes, minimizing that as much as possible, and antioxidants absolutely play a role. This is another area, though, where the discussion really has to go back to diet, in that a diet high in refined carbohydrates and sugars and heavily processed food has been shown to upregulate the creation of these matrix metalloproteinases. So I think you'll get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of preventing that creation, of these harmful enzymes by really paying attention to what you're eating. And then look to supplements and look to skincare as your secondary line of defense. Because if you just pay attention to the skincare part, to the topical part, or even just to the supplement part, but you're continuing to eat the very foods, and again, it has a lot to do with too much sugar, refined sugar. If you're not paying attention to that aspect of it, there's really not a whole heck of a lot topical and supplement is going to do. It's a multifactorial issue, but if we're looking at it in like a triangle fashion, diet is right at the top, and then skincare, supplements. All right, Sunton Bush, what product should I use for a lot of closed comedones? Please help. So closed comedones are also known as whiteheads, or they are sometimes referred to as milia. Milia being more of those hard white bumps. They don't look like pimples. I shouldn't just say white. They're called whiteheads, closed comedones, milia, but how they look in terms of level of whiteness can depend on your natural skin color. So they're going to look really white on me. They may not look so white on somebody who has a medium skin tone. It could, maybe a more accurate term would be flesh toned. Whereas acne has that more angry reddish to reddish brown look, and acne lesions can be painful to the touch, or even just painful without touching them. Whiteheads and closed comedones typically don't hurt. They're just kind of an irksome, some would say unsightly skin issue. So because of the nature of the clogged pore, it's a type of clogged pore, you need salicylic acid. And if you've tried typical over-the-counter strengths of 1 to 2%, you could look to a stronger amount, such as the 4% concentration we have in our Resist Advanced Pore Refining Treatment. You could use that 3 or 4 times a week at night, see how your closed comedones do. If you're starting to see some success, I would stick with it for several more weeks and then see what kind of further resolution you get. And then once you are satisfied, you can look at stepping down to a lower strength, like our Skin Perfecting 2% BHA liquid, for maintenance. If they don't respond, in the case of just staying within the Paula's Choice world, if they don't respond to 4% salicylic acid, we do have a 9% spot treatment that you can also use. My husband swears by that whenever he gets a clogged pore, which doesn't happen very often for him. Lucky. But when they do happen, he'll dab on the BHA 9, and typically in 2-3 days, it's completely gone. No evidence whatsoever. Okay. All right. Let's see. Clara says she loves skincare and she's thinking of buying Paula's Choice azelaic acid over the ordinary one because I heard the texture is better. Texture is always a matter of personal preference. So if anything, I would encourage you to try both and see what you think. Either way, you're getting azelaic acid. I know the work that we went through to make that product, to stabilize it, to ensure that it didn't turn grainy, which can be a tendency with azelaic acid used in that amount. It's a finicky ingredient, but it's a brilliant ingredient for skin. I recommend the azelaic acid booster a lot because the issues that it addresses apply to so many people. Post-breakout marks, breakouts themselves, redness, whether it's occasional or ongoing, just irritated skin, texture issues, color issues. It literally, it's like Bob Fosse. It does it all. That is a product that I personally keep in rotation. I don't use the 10% azelaic acid booster every single day, but I do use it occasionally, and I've been experimenting layering it with hydroquinone to get even better results on some discoloration that I have. And I love azelaic acid, particularly our 10% formula for post-breakup marks. I found that layered with salicylic acid from a separate exfoliant, although our booster does contain 0.5% salicylic acid, it's we included that amount to aid in the penetration of the azelaic acid and the soothing agents. The pH of the azelaic acid booster, full disclosure here, does not permit the salicylic acid to work as an exfoliant. Azelaic acid has different pH requirements than salicylic acid, so if you were to lower the pH of an azelaic acid product, let's say you wanted to do 2% salicylic acid, it would be very tricky to keep the azelaic acid in stable and therefore effective. So you'd be getting the benefits of BHA, but not the AA, which is why we separate them when it comes to exfoliation. That's why the azelaic acid booster is a higher pH that accommodates azelaic acid. Oh my gosh, we're out of time. I'm going to take one more question, though, just for fun. Who haven't we talked to? Clara. So yeah, Clara, try both. Try both and see what you think. Maybe a winner will emerge. Maybe you'll like both. Let's see. Nope, can't talk about that one. If one can't use vitamin C, this is from Andrea, what would be your next choice for an antioxidant that might have similar benefits? So, vitamin C, collagen repairing, definitely has some advantages in terms of brightening, in terms of addressing discolorations, environmental defense. If you can't use vitamin C directly, you may want to look toward natural antioxidants like kiwi, for example, just to name one, or spinach, that are strong sources of vitamin C, but aren't citrus. Citrus, everyone thinks vitamin C, oranges, lemons, limes, and those are highly nutritious fruits to eat, not to mention tasty, but the acidic components and the other volatile compounds that make a lemon smell lemon fresh can irritate your skin. So you want to look for sources of vitamin C that aren't citrus-based, which is easier said than done. We, of course, have some options in our line, but for everything that vitamin C does, I think that the one ingredient that's also an antioxidant that gives it stiff competition would be niacinamide, particularly amounts of 3%, 5%, and upwards if you're looking to improve issues around pores, signs of aging, skin tone, dullness, wrinkles, sallowness, that type of thing. So yeah, look to niacinamide, and you should be able to tolerate it quite well. It shouldn't. I would also encourage you, if you haven't done this, just to round this out. I'm being long-winded here, but given that there are multiple forms of vitamin C, it could be that your skin can't tolerate the ascorbic acid form of it, but the tetrahexyldiesel ascorbate that we spoke of earlier could be just fine. So for example, maybe try our Resist Super Antioxidant Concentrate Serum to get vitamin C from that. There's also ascorbyl glucoside, there's 3-O-ethyl ascorbic acid. There's several different forms that you could try, and you may find that one or more of them is amenable to your skin. It's just the ascorbic acid that you need to stay away from for whatever reason. So on that note, I will be back next week as opposed to in 2 weeks. We'll do 2 more live chats in November, and hope you all have a wonderful Halloween holiday if you celebrate it, or if you celebrate All Saints Day, all kinds of year-end holidays coming up. So, this year, more than most others, I really think it's important that we all take every opportunity to find joy and contentment in whatever makes you happy. And I can tell from most of you that skincare, which I love because skincare and talking about it certainly makes me happy.